Alright everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you're new around here, my name's Jazvader, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. In this video, I'm going to be ranking every single mobility item in Fortnite history from worst to best. So, some of you might be wondering, what counts as a mobility item? Alright, first and foremost, no weapons are going to be on this list. They are strictly going to be mobility items. They can deal damage, it just has to be mobility first. So essentially something like the kinetic blade that's going to be on the list, it can deal damage, but it's mainly movement. But something like the hot rock jewelries will not be on the list, because those are basically just weapons with a mobility side effect. And also, any consumable that gives you any mobility boost will not be on the list. Essentially, that's just anything that gives you like the slap effect, or the hot rock effect, none of those. But hey, now we've got all that out of the way. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. We're well on the way to 1,000 subscribers, so any help is appreciated. But hey, without further ado, let's just dive straight into the mobility item ranking. Alright, and starting off at the number 35 spot in this list, yeah, that's right, you're in for a long one here, is balloons. Now, yes, I think this is the worst mobility item of all time. Listen, maybe in chapter 1 they were good. I remember these being absolutely goated. You know, you just go up all the way in the sky, you'd pick up like a hunting rifle, something like that, and you could literally pick off every single player in the game. Nobody would be looking up. But listen, they recently came back in modern day Fortnite. I believe it was the 8th birthday event. I've just seen that these balloons, they get you kills more often than they get you an advantage. Seriously, if you use these balloons, you are just at a disadvantage. You are going to get picked out of the air. Listen, while they're like pretty good on their own, like if you're not actively getting shot at, these are, you know, the serviceable movement items. But a lot of the items later up on this list are fantastic for like, you know, just getting out of a situation, just running away from an opponent. But outside of that single use case, they are completely useless. And that's why it's all the way at the bottom of the list. Unfortunately, it's just fallen down. That's how it is. And following that one up at the number 34 spot is Icy Feet. Now, I'm not going to touch on this for very long. I mean, what can I say about it? It is quite literally just the Icy Feet effect you get from like an Icy Grappler or just like ice skating on like Greasy Grove as an item. And while it's great for going downhill, it is dreadful for going uphill. And listen, I get annoyed by the Icy Feet effect in general. I just don't think it's a very good effect. It limits where you go. I mean, you have to like build walls to keep you from going all the way down a hill when you're in the middle of a fight. And that's even if you are playing builds. If you're playing zero build, you're basically screwed if you get caught with this effect. I just don't think this mobility item is any good. I think it's only slightly better than the balloons because you can actually use it in like, I don't know, a couple situations. You can use it to get away from the opponents. But outside of those two very specific situations, you're not using this thing. And that's why it's at the number 34 spot. And coming up next at the number 33 spot is the crash pads. These are the standard version, not the mini crash pads people are used to. And there is a reason I put them down here. They're just too big. Listen, I know there's going to be fans of this item. I know there's tons of people that are absolutely in love with this version of the thing. I just think the smaller version of this item is better in every single way. I mean, I know you can pull off some crazy stuff with this item. I know you can send cars flinging. It's pretty cool. But it's just not that good. And there are so many better movement options on this list. I mean, you're just not going to carry these things. And that's why it's down here. I just can't see myself using them whenever they're in a loot pool. You know, there's always going to be a better movement item. Hey, and one of those items coming up next is Ride the Lightning. Now, this was an incredibly interesting movement item, only in the game for a couple of weeks, I believe, you know, for the Metallica concert event. And it was pretty cool. I think you can tell by the tone of my voice, I don't really like this item. I mean, this is the first item on the list that can actually do, you know, like a decent amount of damage. But the thing is about this item, it is just so slow. Everything about it is slow. I don't know, you shoot up, you go around the island, you got like 3 little bursts, but it just feels like really sluggish. And of course, the enemy can actually follow you up there. They can jump in the lightning stream and land where you're landing. I don't know, I just don't see the advantage to using this item. I mean, especially in the season that was in, you know, I mean, were you going to use this or were you going to use cars? You know, obviously the answer is cars. I mean, the answer to everything that season was cars, what am I saying? But I don't know, it's just a pretty mediocre movement item, and that's why I put it at the number 32 spot on this list. And talking about something else I'm not a big fan of, I'm going to get so slandered in the comments down below for this, but it is the inflatable from Chapter 2 Season 7. You might be wondering, hey, I thought this was a fan favorite item. Why have you put this all the way down the list? And I'm going to remind you that this item was barely in the game. It had so many bugs. Like, if you held it down, and I don't really remember how you did it, you literally just got sent through the floor or through the map. 9 times out of 10 you use this item, you were just going to die in some fashion, and you were going to throw your game, and it just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, I have gone back, I have played around with it, it's since been fixed, and it's a pretty okay movement item. Same as the Icy Feet, it's a little bit hard going uphill. You kind of have to like place yourself at the bottom of the hill and like charge up a boost, hope it gets you to the top. If it doesn't, you're literally going to get sent flying back the way you came. And I don't mean to be mean to it, but unless you're going over like a flat field or down a hill, you may as well just walk, you know? And that's why I put it all the way at the number 31 spot on this list. There are just so many movement items that are better than this one, and I just don't mess with it. I'm sorry, gang. Hey, and kicking off the number 30 spot on this list is one that's definitely very mixed in the community. You know, half the community loves this movement item, the other half of the community hates it. And it is the Icy Grappler and Ice Spices Grappler. We're going to put them both on the same spot. They're basically just the exact same item reskinned. And listen, as good as this item is, it is just really, really hard to mess around with. I mean, the whole point of the original Grappler item was the fact that you can obviously grapple onto places with precision and you would land there. And this item is super weird in the way that it doesn't really do that. Obviously, it'll do the same thing, it'll bring you to the spot, but then you get given the Icy Feet effect and you basically just slide around everywhere. It could be perfect for like confusing the opponent, and it is pretty good for movement, I'll give you that much. It definitely solves the uphill issue that the Icy Feet item had, but I'm sorry, it's just not for me. Like I said, if you're good with this item, you are goated with this item, but if you are any less than goated, you're just gonna get full boxed, and you will just get one pumped. That's how it is. But hey, coming up to the number 29 spot is the Crash Pad Jr. Now, this is a really, really good item. I definitely think going past this point of the list, every single item here, you know, you can bring it back. People won't be angry. People would use it. I definitely think there's more good movement items than there are bad movement items, and this is one of them. Now, how do I explain this one? I don't know, it's kind of like shockwaves, but more balanced. Obviously, you can jump off the side of the building, throw it beneath your feet, and then you can kind of lead that momentum going on. It is just very similar to a shockwave. It is obviously a small version of the Crash Pad, which is really good. I don't know, it's just a very self-explanatory item. It is literally just placing down a bouncy pad on the floor, which sends you in the direction you jump on it. It is a perfectly serviceable movement item. I mean, would I pick it up over something like, I don't know, the Shockwaves or the Typhoon Blade? No, I would not. But if I had no other movement items, I mean, I just needed to get out the area, I would pick this up and I would use it. And that's why it's all the way at that number 29 spot on this list. Alright, and we're going to blast through the next few on this list because I don't really have much to say about them. At the number 28 spot, we have the Base Boost Gauntlets. These were pretty cool. I just didn't really like them as mobility items. It's a big reason why I didn't play it as much of the season. I mean, they're pretty good for destroying builds, but they're not that great for movement. And they were held back so much by the durability they had. You were going through like 4 of these every single game. It was insane. At number 27, we had the Lawless Rocket Launcher. Should have been great. I mean, it had the potential to be one of the best movement items in Fortnite history, but it got placed into a season with barely any rockets anywhere. I mean, you could only hold 13 rockets in this thing at a time, so essentially you had 13 blasts. It lasted you all of about 2 minutes, and then it was useless. It was a paperweight, you know? I mean, there were 2 other mobility items in that season which could last so much longer, and were just better movement items overall. At the number 26 spot, we have Shuri's Claws. Honestly, these were pretty good. They were just rendered useless by the existence of the hover jets. I mean, obviously, this had a weapon functionality to it, but you just couldn't use it. I mean, you just weren't going to hit any of your opponents because they're all flying up in the sky like mosquitoes. And I mean, the movement part of this item isn't very good either. It just gives you an extended spin for about 30 seconds, and then it just kind of conks out. Overall, they were honestly just kind of a mediocre movement item, and that's why it's all the way at the number 26 spot on this list. And coming up next at the number 25 spot on this list is a little bit of a strange one because it's actually 4 separate items that do the exact same thing, and it's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles items. Now, of course, you had Donatello's staff, Leonardo's katanas, Raphael's sai, and Michelangelo's nunchaku. I'm sorry if I've butchered those. I do not watch the show, but in my opinion, these were like kind of mediocre. They were essentially just reskinned kinetic blades. They kind of nerfed it a bit so it did less damage and it went less distance. And listen, these items, they were really, really mediocre. I don't think anybody was picking them up. I mean, in Chapter 5 Season 1, you had so many different ways to move. I mean, even during the TMNT weekend, you had the unvaulting of drift boards, which, in my opinion, is one of the best vehicles in Fortnite history. You're not going to be taking these over the drift boards. You're not going to be taking these over the grapple blades. You're not going to be taking these over shockwaves. Hell, even riding the train gets you around faster than using these items. And that's why it's at the number 25 spot on this list. And following that one up is another mediocre melee item, and it is the Forsaken Vow Blade. Obviously, this is a recent addition to the list. It was only in the game for a couple of weeks at the beginning of Chapter 7 Season 1, and then it just got vaulted out of nowhere. And this is just another Kinetic Blade reskin. I believe it's a little bit stronger than the TMNT Mythics, so it goes slightly above it, but literally apply everything I said about the TMNT Mythics to this item, and you have my opinions on it. If you want to hear me talk about it in more detail, make sure to head on over and check out my video ranking every single item in Chapter 7 Season 1. I'll put a link to it up in the corner. Watch it after this video if you want. I just think it's a worse version of a weapon we have seen reiterated so many times. Oh, and hey, I just realized I forgot about the K-pop Demon Hunter's sword. Literally put it in the same spot as the Forsaken Vow Blade. It is essentially the exact same weapon. I mean, the damage is a little bit stronger, but everything else feels the same, so I'm going to put it there. And that's why it's at the number 24 spot on this list. Hey, and coming up next, at the number 23 spot on this list, I know I'm going to get slandered for this one, but I really didn't like this movement item, and of course, it is airbending. Now, a lot of people like to glaze this movement item. People love this thing, and listen, I'm not going to deny, you can actually make some serious distance with it. I mean, it's pretty insane in that department, but it just makes you a huge target. Your hitbox is huge, you know, you're a bright white circle. And especially in, you know, Chapter 5, it was a little bit colorless. I mean, that bright cell-shaded white circle, you could see it from miles away. People knew exactly where you were. You're not going to run away from a fight using this thing. I mean, this item, it just leaves you incredibly vulnerable, and that's why I put it where it is on the list. I don't know, I'm just not a fan. Alright, and following that one up at the number 22 spot on this list is an interesting one. It's a very interesting one, and it is the Void Oni Mask. Now, I'm a big fan of this item. I'm just incredibly bad with it. I can never get it to send me anywhere useful. I mean, basically, what this item does is it quite literally just teleports you. You can use it as, like, I don't know, a quick save if you go into a fight and you get a little bit pressured. You can literally just use it and teleport away from the fight immediately. It is pretty cool in that regard, but as, like, a genuine movement item, I mean, in the time it takes for you to, like, line it up properly, you know, like, aim it optimally, you know, just so it can be as far away from you as possible. You could have basically just run there yourself. I mean, as a concept, it is a great item. I mean, definitely there's so many interesting ways you can use this, but just not to get around the map. And that's why it's at the number 22 spot on this list. It is a great item, don't get me wrong. It's just not a good mobility item. But I'll tell you what is a good mobility item. At the number 21 spot, it is the Rocket Ram. This is an incredible movement item. I think it is really cool. Everything about it screams like a heist item. It feels incredibly fluid. I mean, of course, there's the whole factor of being able to just demolish through, like, entire buildings. It is insane. But I just think the concept of this kind of item has been done better by one a little bit further up on this list. But listen, let's get back to the Rocket Ram itself. I mean, it's just a fun item, you know? You fly up in the air, you know, you arc yourself, you stay in the air for a couple of seconds, and then you come crashing down and you explode everything when you land. I mean, it can get you, like, a pretty insane distance. I mean, it doesn't have durability, which is a huge plus. You can just keep using and using and using and using this. I mean, this is very much the tank of the Fortnite movement items. I just think it is fantastic. Everything about it feels really nice. I mean, it doesn't feel clunky, which is definitely an issue I have with previous items on this list. It is incredibly user-friendly, and I like it a lot. But coming up next is definitely a very strange one. You gotta hear me out for this next one. It is the Grapple Blade. Now, a lot of the people who like this item might be going, why is this confusing? Why do we have to hear you out? And it's because I actually like the Rocket Ram more than this one, but I cannot deny that this item is better for movement. Alright, listen, let's just list off, you know, the positives. I mean, it has 3 users, don't have to wait for a charge, which is definitely a huge issue with the Rocket Ram. It has a 25-second charger. I mean, they recharge fairly quickly. You know, it's pretty sweet. I don't know, man. Something about this item, it just feels clunky. I mean, it just kind of feels like, I don't know, moving around in, like, syrup. I don't really know how to describe it. It's something about it just makes you feel like you're not really going anywhere, even if you can make it, like, you know, quite a bit of distance across the map. There's just something about this item I just don't gel with. And to be fair, that's how it's ended up here. It is a perfectly serviceable movement item, and it basically fits in every single season. Hey, but you know what I think's better than it? I think the chainsaw is a better item. Obviously, first introduced in Chapter 5, Season 4, we have seen it come back in, I believe, the Simpsons season as the cartoon chainsaw, basically unchanged apart from the animations. And this is a pretty fun movement item. Now listen, I'm not going to deny, this item does have its flaws. I mean, you will get stuck in the animations, like, for a solid second after you stop using it. You know, it's very hard to get out of. If you get shot while you're using it, you just kind of have to hope you can get behind something before you stop, otherwise you're going to get absolutely lasered. But while you're using this item, it is fantastic. I mean, it removes all fall damage, regardless of height, wherever you're going. I mean, it feels really smooth going up and down hills. I mean, as long as it's not like a 90-degree angle, you're going to go up that hill. It's going to take you all the way up the hill. drill. I remember using it to get like right at the top of the mountains in chapter 5. You could scale those things in seconds. Nobody would be able to keep up with you. It was incredible, but I just think the animations hinder this a lot. Like, it takes ages to turn, it takes ages to stop. Listen, I use this thing all the time whenever it's in a loot pool. But listen, even as like a devout user of this item, I can't deny that this weapon has flaws. And that's why it's ended up at the number 19 spot on this list. Hey, and coming up next at the number 18 spot on this list, I did hint to it earlier, and it is the rocket drill. I just think this is what the rocket rhyme should have been from day one. It is an improved version of it in every single way. I mean, when the season first came out, I was of the impression that the rocket rhyme would be better, but they both came out during the same season, and I found myself picking up this one a little bit more often. And that's because it has so many different use cases. Obviously, you can use it as a close quarters weapon if you're in a pinch. You know, you've just landed, there's an opponent right there with a shotgun. You can actually just use it to like smack them in the face with it, confuse them a little bit. But the real strength of this weapon is the fact that you can actually control the flight in like bursts. I don't really know how to explain it. I mean, you can choose when to stop, you can choose when to start, you know, you can go. It is essentially the same as the rocket rhyme. You just have way more control over like where you're going or what you're doing. You're not just set on like a certain path once you've locked it in. It is pretty cool. And that's why it's all the way up at the number 18 spot on this list. It is essentially just everything I've said about the rocket rhyme, but better. Everything about it is just slightly better. Hey, but talking about better, at the number 17 spot on this list is the kinetic blade. Now, you do have to consider the fact that this weapon received a massive nerf in Chapter 6 Season 1. If this was the version of the kinetic blade all the way back from Chapter 4 Season 2, it would have easily broken top 10. I mean, it used to be one of my favorite movement items of all time, but it's just fallen down the list because it got hit with a massive durability nerf. And the issue about this kinetic blade is the fact that obviously it still had the whole like recharge thing, you know, you had to wait for it to recharge, then also had durability, and I believe it could only do like 20 different dashes, which is nothing. That is barely anything. This weapon used to be infinite. It used to be the GOAT, and it is so sad to see it fall all the way down here. I mean, it had, you know, pretty decent damage, I guess. You know, you could use this as a weapon if you were in a pinch, but what people were using it for was the movement. I just think it needs a little bit of a buff. Remove durability, and this weapon goes back to GOAT status. Hey, and you know what? We're going to carry on with another item that was affected by durability, and it is the wings of Icarus, obviously introduced in Chapter 5 Season 2. I believe it was one of the first flying items in the game. I mean, we've had quite a few more since this, but this was the first. And you know what? For like a first experiment, this was pretty good. You know, you actually did feel like you were flying. But I mean, the main complaint I have, and the community as a whole had with this item, is the fact that it just makes your hitbox massive. I mean, I mentioned it briefly with, you know, like the airbending item, but listen, this thing had that issue on a whole other level. I mean, listen, even in a season full of like projectile weapons where it's impossible to hit anything out of the air, the hitbox was so large, you would just get shot down every single time. The hitbox was like a massive issue for this item, and it brought it down so much, and that's why it's all the way at the number 16 spot on this list. And following that one up at the number 15 spot on this list is actually quite a few, because they kind of just reskinned this item again and again and again. But it is the grapple glider, Jewel's grapple glider, Robin's grapple glider, and Batman's grapple gun. Now, this is actually a really good movement item. This is definitely the point of the list where all of these, you know, if they were ever added back to the game, I would be so hyped. And this, honestly, the grapple glider is one of my favorite movement items of all time. Now, I definitely do think the standard grappler is a little bit easier to use. You know, I do think the glider part of this item does kind of restrict what you do with it, especially since they took out the glitch that you can actually just cancel the glider with. But overall, it's a pretty decent item. What more can I say? Obviously, it works as a standard grappler does. You aim it somewhere, but when you get to, like, you know, where you were supposed to be, your glider gets equipped, you know, saving you from any fall damage. And like I said, this can be an issue because, you know, if you miss your spot, you're basically stuck in a glider animation. You have to hope you can hit the ground before you get lasered. But I mean, if using this item goes well, everything goes, you know, as it's supposed to. You know, you glide down onto the opponent, or you can even just, like, grapple onto the highest point in a location and send yourself, like, flying halfway across the map. It is a really well put together movement item, and I can assure you, if some of the more recent additions to the game didn't exist, it would have easily made it into that top 10. But unfortunately, there's just been way better items added to the game. I'm talking about those very items. At the number 14 spot on this list is the wingsuit, introduced in Chapter 7 Season 1. I've already made my thoughts clear about this item. I think this is incredible. It is one of my favorite movement items in recent times, you know? I mean, everything about it feels balanced, you know, both for you and the enemy. Of course, it has a little charge up animation, which allows the enemy to shoot you before you take off. I mean, then of course it can actually get you like a pretty decent distance. It has quite the skill ceiling because, you know, obviously you got like the basic people using this to glide up and then to glide down. But if you know how to work this, you know, you can take this item like halfway across the map if you're doing like, you're keeping yourself like staying up in the air. I mean, I stated this in my chapter 7 perspective. I think this item could like fully become a mainstay Fortnite movement item. You know, it doesn't really have a theme. I mean, that's definitely a big issue with quite a few items on this list. I mean, they're really good, but they're kept in the vault because they don't suit the theme of every single season. You know, look at the kinetic blade that can only come back in like a Japanese themed season. No, this item could come back in literally any single season, and that's honestly why I love it so much. This thing could become iconic, and I beg of you, Epic, keep it in for as long as you can. Hey, and talking about a really good movement item, at the number 13 spot is actually two different items. You have the Spider-Verse web shooters and the grapple glove. They are essentially, you know, the same weapon. They're just a nerfed version of the Spider-Man web shooters, which will be way up this list. I think those are one of the best movement items of all time. I mean, listen, let's compare the two. Spider-Man web shooters, you had 80 shots. These ones, you have 30 and 40 respectively. Spider-Man web shooters, you could go so fast and so far. This one, it has a bit more of a limited reach. You only go like half the speed. It's just kind of like a lesser version of an item that is higher up on this list. I mean, I love it to pieces. I love picking it up whenever it's in a loot pool. The grapple glove is a really, really good movement item. It could be better. They could buff it a little bit more. I think it would be wise to buff it. But in the state it's in at the moment, it is, like I've said for quite a lot of the items in this part of the list, perfectly serviceable. And that's why it's set it up at the number 13 spot on this list. Hey, and following that one up at the number 12 spot on this list is easily one of my favorite fly item of all time, and it is the Iron Man jet boots. Now, these have a huge advantage over something like the wings of Icarus. It didn't have a massive hitbox. I mean, obviously, they're literally just shoes. They're not going to increase your hitbox at all. You're going to be really hard to shoot, especially in a season with projectile weapons. And of course, these boots have the massive advantage of being able to pair it up with the Iron Man gauntlets and actually, you know, like shoot at the players. Listen, I know that comes from like an entirely different item, but the Unibeam can be used mid-flight. It can be used, you know, without even interacting with the gauntlet. So I'm going to count it as a part of this weapon that isn't unlocked all the time, but when you have another unrelated item in your inventory, this part of the item unlocks. I mean, you can hit some insane shots with this Unibeam, and that's why it's ended up at the number 12 spot on this list. It is just a perfected version of the wings of Icarus. It is a better version of the wingsuit, and while I definitely think it's a little bit overpowered, we are definitely going to be crossing into overpowered territory later up on this list. It is really fun to use, and I remember the first time I used it, I was blown away. Hey, but coming up next at the number 11 spot in this list is another item which I think is very controversial in the community. I mean, this item was so hated on and dogged on by the community in Chapter 6 Season 4 that it got removed within 2 weeks of the season being out, and it is the Shockwave Launcher. I mean, of course, it first appeared as a mythic in Chapter 2 Season 3, and eventually it came back, I believe, in Chapter 2 Season 7. It used rockets as ammo, and it is easily one of the strongest movement items we have had in Fortnite history. I mean, this thing is ridiculous. It is shockwaves on crack. The only downside to this weapon is, of course, rockets. If you're in a season with limited rocket supply, you're just not going to be able to use this thing as much as you want to. But listen, as long as you have, like, max ammo, this weapon is a beast. It will go through any structure. I mean, you can put so much pressure on an enemy with this. When you can shoot it behind them, they come flying towards you. You can then, like, whip out your shotgun and one-pump them to the head. I have never in my life seen a movement item this broken and this uncounterable, and for that reason, I've knocked it a few points down. It just doesn't feel as fun to use as, you know, like some other items up on this list. It just kind of feels like there's no real, like, fun to it. And I don't know, it's strong, don't get me wrong, but I think there's just been better mobility items. Hey, and kicking off the top 10 on this list, it's the original, it's the classic, it is the Grappler. Obviously, we're also going to include Sky's Mythic Grappler. It's essentially the same as this item, but you can use it infinitely. If it was separate, it would go above it, but it's basically the same item, so we're going to group them together. And honestly, what do I even say about the Grappler? I mean, it was one of the first movement items ever added to Fortnite, and it can fit into every single season perfectly. It is incredibly well balanced, you know, it doesn't feel too strong, it doesn't feel too weak. One thing I wish they would bring back is fall damage with this item. I think it's just a little bit too much on the strong side without fall damage. But you know what? At the moment of speaking, it is one of the most fun movement items of all time. You could hit some insane clips with this thing. I mean, it just feels perfectly balanced. It feels great to use, and that's why it's ended up at the number 10 spot in this list. It's just good. Hey, you know what? Talking about good, at the number 9 spot in this list is easily one of my favorite movement items of all time. I was running this every single time I saw it on the ground, and it is the Lawless Rift Launcher. What a movement item. Everything about it is perfect, you know, like you literally just shoot a rift down at your feet. You know, you can instantly run away from an enemy. It is brilliant using it against an enemy. If you shoot it at them, you can literally just laser them straight out of the sky. I mean, even the cooldown for a weapon like this, you got 2 charges, and I believe it has a cooldown of around 30 to 40 seconds, depending on how often you're using it. Even the cooldown feels like incredibly forgiving because, you know, you get sent way up into the sky. By the time you've actually landed, you've already got a charge back and you can carry on going. This weapon was a beast with a Midas drum gun. I believe that dropped at the same time. I mean, hell, I'm pretty sure it was in the same black market. And if you used both those items at the exact same time, I mean, you were just unstoppable. I mean, you rift around, you get to better cover, and then you destroy somebody with the drum gun. I mean, it's one of the best combos in Fortnite history. When used correctly, especially in squads, you can literally just throw it down and then your entire squad can move halfway across the map. It is goated, and that's why it's all the way at the number 9 spot on this list. Hey, and at the number 8 spot on this list is another incredible movement item, and it is the Typhoon Blade. This is easily the best blade item we have ever gotten in Fortnite history. I mean, the speed you could get up to with this item was incredible. It gave you a massive speed boost, especially when you had the Shogun X medallion. It was mental. It was absolutely mental. I mean, you had the dash attack. It did like upwards of 90 damage. You know, you had the slash attack, which could do well up to 120 damage. This was a beast of a weapon. They tried to nerf it. They tried to debuff it. Nothing worked. This weapon stayed goated all the way till the end of this season. Even with durability, I mean, this weapon was so good that you just didn't need more than 2. Seriously, if you weren't carrying one of these in Chapter 6 Season 1, you were just gonna get cooked, and that was a fact. And that's why it's ended up where it is on the list. Easily one of the best movement items in Fortnite history, and it more than deserves to be where it's ended up. Alright, and coming up next at the number 7 spot on this list is the Kneecapper from Chapter 6 Season 2. Now listen, I'm going to be honest, this is basically just the Typhoon Blade on steroids. This thing is insane. I mean, obviously you had insane movement from this item, you know, you could go so far and so fast just like the Typhoon Blade, but even further and even faster. You had the added benefit of being able to actually charge up a shot, and you could send somebody flying halfway across the map. You killed them instantly if you even did it so much in the direction of a hill. I mean, frankly, this item was ridiculous. This is easily one of the most broken items in Fortnite history, but the movement you can do with this item is incredible, and it was a menace over that season, and that's why it's all the way at the number 7 spot on this list. Hey, and coming up next at the number 6 spot on this list is another incredibly broken item. I mean, even hearing the name of these items will send a shiver down somebody's spine watching this video, and they are the Nitro Fists. I mean, these were just ridiculous. I mean, there was just nothing you could do against them. If you didn't have them, you were going to lose. If you wanted to build, you're just going to lose. I mean, if you tried to hide, you would lose. Of course, we're going to talk about the actual movement part of these items, and you know what? It's pretty good. You know, you can get some pretty decent distance. The charge is a little bit forgiving. I believe it's only like 5 or 10 seconds. This weapon got nerfed so heavily into the ground, you know. I think it's actually a pretty fair weapon now. On release, this weapon was insane. But listen, after the nerfs that I mentioned, and after all was said and done, I think these, you know, they kind of fell off. I mean, listen, as broken as the damage is, like, movement-wise, they're not exactly the best. That's why it's all the way at the number 6 spot in this list. It is incredible. I just think there's 5 more items that are better in every single way. Hey, I'm kicking off the top 5 on this list. At the number 5 spot is the Shockwave Hammer. This is easily one of my favorite movement items of all time. I was waiting so long for it to come back. I believe it came back for a day in Chapter 6 Season 3. And to be frank, this is easily one of the best movement items Fortnite has ever come out with. I mean, it's incredibly well balanced. Everything about it just feels well put together, you know? I believe it had 4 charges. I believe the mythic version of it had 5 charges, which was just so good. I mean, of course, this weapon has no durability, so it has like an advantage over basically every single like Chapter 5, Chapter 6, Chapter 7. I mean, it has an advantage over every single movement item introduced since then. I mean, it feels incredibly fluid. You can control exactly where you're going. It is really, really well put together. But unfortunately, it is just slightly edged out of the top 3 on this list by some of the best movement items of all time. And starting that off at the number 4 spot in this list is War Machine's hoverjets. Now, I have a bone to pick with this mobility item. I mean, this is the most busted movement item of all time. I mean, especially in the season it was introduced in, you know, obviously Chapter 5. I've been saying over and over again on this list, they had projectile weapons. I mean, seriously, I'm going to quote another creator that I watch all the time. It really just felt like Mosquito Shooting Simulator. I mean, if somebody had this and you didn't, you were going to lose. I mean, if we're talking about combos still, if you paired this up with the Captain America shield, especially in Zero build, you were finished. There was nothing you could do. They'd fly above you, you'd shoot at them, the bullet wouldn't hit them in time, and then they would just nail you with a lock-on shield. It was insane. It was really good for mobility, I will tell you that much. You could easily get around the map, didn't have durability, it actually recharged. And hell, this item was such a menace because of that, that Epic Games literally added durability to every single movement item for the next year and a half. Something like this should never happen again. And that's why it's all the way at the number 4 spot on this list. Hey, and following that one up, at the number 3 spot on this list, I'm sure you were all waiting for this one, it's Shockwaves. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about this specific item in recent time. I mean, over the last year, there has been a lot of hate for this item. And I will admit, this is probably one of the most frustrating movement items of all time. It is just so easy to use. Basically, everything I said about the Shockwave launcher, everything about that applies to this movement item, except all of the issues are amplified like tenfold because of how common this item is. It's everywhere. You walk into an empty room, there's a shockwave on the floor. You drop on a roof, there's a shockwave on the roof. These things can be found everywhere. It is ridiculous. And honestly, they're getting really tired out at this point. I don't think they've been out of the game once since Chapter 5 Season 1. They have been in the game for well over 2 years without even faltering once. And I think they need to go. And that's why it's all the way up at the number 3 spot on this list. Hey, but following that one up is one of my favorite movement items of all time. It is the Spider-Man web shooters. What an incredible movement item. I mean, seriously, I was blown away when I picked this up. I mean, you'd never had something like it before in Fortnite history. I mean, listen, movement items up until that point, they'd just been variations on shockwaves. You know, you had like the shockwave launcher, you had the inflatable, you had the grappler. I mean, before this point, everything was just a tiny bit simple. You know, everything was a little bit more basic. This was the turning point for Fortnite mobility. I mean, you can fly around the map in this thing. It has 80 uses. I believe some of it was infinite use. I don't know what was up with that. But no, as standard, this item has 80 uses, which is more than enough for an entire game. You're not going to run out with 80 uses. Okay, let's be real. This item, it is a little bit useless when you're in like kind of more like a flat area. There's no real trees around, which basically meant like if you were going to get good use out of this item, it had to be like in the upper left corner of the map or the jungle area. But listen, when you could actually use this item properly, you know, you were in a good position. This was insane. Listen, it's one of my favorite movements in Fortnite history. You could definitely make an argument of swapping the number 1 and the number 2 spot on this list. But listen, I just think it gets slightly outclassed by the weapon at the number 1 spot. So I'm sure all of you guys are ready and waiting to hear what I've put at the number 1 spot on this list. Hey, and sitting all the way at the top of the list, at the number 1 spot, is the ODM gear. Now, this is an interesting one because, honestly, I didn't really use it all that much when it was out. I mean, of course, it released in Chapter 4 Season 2, and at the time, I was a firm Kinetic Blade stan, you know, that was the one I stuck with throughout the entire season. I barely used this thing. But you know what? I was looking back on some footage so I could use it in the background of this video, and it is, to be quite frank, the best movement item the game has ever had. I mean, seriously, using this thing was insane. You flew around the map and then you can actually like lock onto the enemies and deal damage to them. Combining this with the Havoc Pump Shotgun was an incredible experience. I mean, listen, they are kind of similar to the Spider-Man web shooters. I mean, I am definitely going to say they are quite similar in, you know, how you kind of get around, but it is the lock-on feature that makes this thing truly goated. You know, I believe it does 40, 50 damage. I mean, you could do like tons of tricks. You could do like so many different things. You had like the dash attack, you had the pull attack. It was incredible. There's so much to do with this item. I mean, unlike the Spider-Man web shooters, you know, where they kind of had like, you know, different shots, this thing works on like a basic version of durability, but it is in no way like the Chapter 6 durability. Listen, I'm just waffling at this point. I don't really have much more to say about it, so I'm going to start wrapping it up. Listen, you could definitely swap the number 1 spot and the number 2 spot around on this list if you're more of a fan of the Spider-Man web shooters or you're more a fan of the ODM gear. But in my opinion, this map had the advantage of being able to actually use the item. And honestly, that's why it's ended up at the number 1 spot on this list. Alright everybody, thank you so much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. I know this was a long one. I did not realize what I was getting into ranking all these things. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and make sure to remember to put on that notification bell so you actually get told when my videos come out. Hey, but you know what? At the end of the day, all you really have to do is take care of yourself, drink some water, and have a fantastic day. Bye-bye!